Commission on Human Rights is now under consideration.
Mr. President, I may have 1 minute suspension so that we can clear the gallery.
Session is suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
President, I move that we consider the budget of the Commission on Human Rights.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion is approved.
May we recognize the sponsor of the budget, Senator Pambilo Lacson, Mr. President.
Senator Lacson, as a sponsor, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. As per NEP, the Commission on Human Rights has a total budget of 651,945,000, which was reduced by the House of Representatives by 114,873,000. So we have a gap of 500, or General Appropriations Bill of 537,072,000. In the Senate, or under the Senate version, we increased the budget of the Commission on Human Rights by 156,432,000 for a total of 693,504,000 pesos, Mr. President. That includes the budget of the Human Rights Violations Victims Memorial Commission in the amount of 28,565. So that leaves the Commission on Human Rights proper with a budget of 623,380,000 pesos, Mr. President. That's all for the budget of the Commission on Human Rights. Now ready for interpellation.
President, may I be recognized for a few questions to...
For interpellation, the majority leader is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. The sponsor will have to I beg the indulgence of the sponsor. I usually face the presiding officer. I'm from the old school. Mr. President, based on the 2016 budget of the CHR, and based on the COA recommendation on this budget, the CHR Regional Office 9 in Zamboanga failed to pay on time the financial and community assistance to the victims of human rights violations. This is in contrast, of course, to the Commission's mandate to ensure that government services be received timely and without delay. May we know the reason for the delay?
Thank you, Mr. President. There's an update. The latest here is that for the Zamboanga siege, they've already disbursed a total of 5,378,000 pesos. Of benefiting 1,729 victims of the Zamboanga siege, Mr. President.
So
That's as of June 30, 2017.
as of 2017. Now, can we safely say that this has not happened to in the rest of the country, in the rest of the other regions?
They actually fast-tracked
This
this, so I suppose they also are doing the same thing in the whole country, Mr. President. Yes.
So,
They're aiming at a zero backlog. So by the end of the year, I think they shall have achieved that already.
thank you, Mr. President. That's good to hear. Now, the CHR has only 526 permanent field positions out of the 854 authorized positions. What are these 328 vacant positions, Mr. President? And may we know why there is such a vacancy?
They have 200 new items, and the appropriations was only approved for this current year, for this fiscal year. So they are in the process of hiring additional personnel, Mr. President.
Oh, I see. So this was recently, to 854 recent.
Yeah. So it's now that's the recent number of personnel. They still have vacancies, Mr. President. 77 lawyers, 63 investigators, and 38 trainers, which they intend to fill up, Mr.
All
President.
right. That's good to know also. Now, I was also informed that Palawan has the lowest share, 0.81%, or 2 million only from the total CHR budget. Why is this so? Wala bang human rights violations sa Palawan?
Unfortunately, they don't have a regional office in Palawan. They only have a field office.
I see. That is the reason for the low budget
one staff.
necessary.
Just staffed by only one personnel, Mr. President,
Really? And where does he or she hold office?
in Taytay, Palawan, Mr. President. Maybe he or she is just squatting there.
All right,
she.
just a few more. You have an unobligated allotment of 21 million. May we know what programs are covered by this unobligated allotment? And what is the reason for non-implementation?
Actually, for this fiscal year, when we deliberated on the budget of the CHR last year, I amended the General Appropriations Bill to give them additional 100 million. That's for infrastructure. And probably the reason for the unobligated amount is that they have not yet perfected the bidding for that or for those infrastructure projects, Mr. President.
So the unobligation is temporary.
Temporary. They will obligate the same, Mr. President.
I have some other questions on the issue of human rights violations and statistics, but we can get that from usual hearings of the Senate and not during the budget deliberations. So in deference to the chair, the chair and I have something in common, and then of course the sister of the presiding officer, the Senate President, I terminate my interpellations on the budget of the CHR, and I move to submit.
How about the sponsor, Mr. President? Don't we have anything in common?
That is common public knowledge.
May we know more about the human rights funds that was mentioned? What is this, how much, and how can our citizens avail of the funds?
For financial assistance, Mr. President?
Yes, sir.
We have 9 million pesos for victims of human rights violations, Mr. President. The backlog is with the victims of the Zamboanga siege, Mr. President. But they're playing catch up in that regard.
And the total fund is only 9 million?
9 million.
But in the Zamboanga siege alone, thousands would be entitled to receive.
It was much, much lower in the previous years, Mr. President. And the maximum amount that they can give is only 10,000 pesos per victim.
It's in line with the program of the DOJ for victims of violent crimes, 10,000.
I suppose so, Mr. President.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Sponsor.
Thank you. So with that, Mr. President, I move to submit the budget of the Commission on Human Rights and deemed submitted to the bodies for the bodies
Any
consideration.
objection? Hearing none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. May we call on now the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process.
Any objection? Hearing none, the budget of the OPAPP is now under consideration.
Thank you. We continue to recognize the sponsor of the budget, Senator Pampilo Lacson, and to interpellate the Minority Leader, Senator Frank Drilon.
Both Senators Lacson and Drilon are recognized.
May we have a 1-minute suspension?
Session suspended.
Ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
Senator Lacson, Senator Dillon, Mr. President.
Yes, they have been both
Thank you, Mr.
recognized.
President. As per NEP, the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process has a total appropriations of 7,677,000,005 pesos, Mr. President. There's no change in House Bill 6215 as well as in the Senate version, at least in the Senate version, first reading, Mr. President. The bulk of which is 7 billion pesos for the implementation of the Pamana program. With that, I'm ready for the interpellation.
Go ahead, sir.
Mr. President, we avail of this period to raise a few questions on the period of interpellation on the good sponsor. Under the enabling statute of OPAPP, that is Executive Order Number 3, Series of 2001, under Section 5B, the OPAPP shall be charged with the management and supervision of the comprehensive peace process, and this is in continuance of the work initiated by the National Unification Commission when it was originally constituted. So, my first question is, from the way the mandate of the OPAPP is crafted, it is management, it is supervision of the peace process. Is that correct, Mr. President?
That is correct, Mr. President. As a matter of fact, the mandate of the office is to oversee, coordinate, and integrate the implementation of the comprehensive peace process. And as you correctly pointed out, it was created through Executive Order 125, Series of 1993, which was later amended in 2001 by Executive Order Number 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Now, there is nothing in the executive order, both original and mandatory, which authorizes OPAPP or OPAPP to implement projects as it is worded today in the law.
That is correct, Mr. President. However, on July 8, 2016,
July 8,
2016,
yes,
there was a directive from the President that Executive Order Number 3, Series 2001, be amended to enable the office to oversee development projects and at the same time empowered it to implement projects that are related to peace.
this
And so, with that, there is a special provision on this current year's on this year's budget, allowing them to special provision, payapa at masaganang pamayanan program. The OPAPP shall validate the quarterly reports on the status of the implementation of the payapa at masaganang pamayanan pamana program within 10 calendar days from the submission thereof by the following implementing agencies and evaluate the progress, results, and outcome of the program to ensure its proper implementation. And it named several implementing agencies: CHED, DNR, DOH, DSWD, NCIP, PhilHealth, and the PNP, Mr. President.
So the way I understand that special provision in the 2017 General Appropriations Act, the OPAPP will review the submissions of the different implementing agencies to see to it that it is consistent with the objective for which OPAPP was formed.
That is correct, Mr. President. However, there's a second paragraph, implementation of Pamana program. The amount of 7,773,879,000 pesos appropriated herein for the Pamana program shall be used exclusively by OPAPP to implement the following projects in identified conflict-affected areas, and it enumerates the project type as well as the project cost, Mr. President.
All right. So, is it now the situation in OPAPP that they are implementing projects?
I actually raised the same issue during the budget deliberation last year for this year's budget, because I myself at the time had reservations on the capability or the capacity of OPAPP to implement projects. Then according to them, they're entering into a MOA with LGUs and other implementing agencies, and it's not actually implementing. They're not actually implementing projects, Mr. President.
You see, I have, just for the record, you know, OPAP's budget in 2016, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. President, is 651,707,000. I think that's a correct. If the good sponsor can confirm that.
That is correct, Mr. President.
Now, in 2017, it suddenly jumped to 8,060,000,000.
That is correct, Mr. President.
And in 2018, the proposal is 7,677,000,000.
Also correct, Mr. President.
And all of these very substantial amounts are in lump sum.
Not every project for implementation is in lump sum.
No, as
appropriations,
it
Mr.
appears in
President.
the budget, as it appears in the General Appropriations Act, is it one line or are the projects enumerated and specific amounts are indicated across each program or project?
They actually submitted to DBM itemized
Right.
list of projects. However, you are correct, Mr. President. Some project types are in lump sum
Yes.
appropriations, like agricultural productivity support, agri-fishery, capacity building, community infrastructure, electrification, livelihood, and water system.
Yes, that's precisely the point we are driving at. Because, you know, in the spirit of the Supreme Court's decision in the PDAF cases is the intervention of the legislators after the budget is passed. Similarly, that principle will apply with equal force on members of the cabinet intervention after the budget is passed by Congress, so that what it points to is that there must be least discretion in execution of the budget, and that is achieved by specifying the programs for which the amounts are being appropriated. In this particular case, we have no objection. If this is what is needed, yes. But our position is that number one, we must specify in the budget the programs and budgets and activities that are supposed to be funded. Number two, this must be executed by the implementing agency, because I cannot imagine that with the limited manpower of OPAPP, they will be the ones to implement. It must be implemented by the implementing agencies. So that, for example, you mentioned agriculture, then it must be implemented by the Department of Agriculture, and depending on the nature of the activity, the particular particular bureau or bureau in the Department of Agriculture. If it involves, for example, fisheries, then the Bureau of Fisheries should be the one to implement, and this should be so provided in the budget. Because I have very serious reservations, Mr. President, about OPAPP as an implementing agency, and if not an implementing agency, they can simply designate the amounts that will be used for a particular activity and enter into a MOA by with the implementing agency. So what we're leading to is that our preference, we're submitting to the chair the amendment that would, number one, enumerate the activities or programs. Number two, the amounts that will be appropriated for these programs or activities. And number three, the implementing agency that will implement this.
For the record, I'm in full agreement with the distinguished minority leader. As a matter of fact, I raise exactly the same issue whenever I interpolate the budgets of agencies like the DPWH and other implementing agencies. However, just for the record, Mr. Chairman, Mr. President, they gave the following justification, and I just read some portions of it. It says development projects in OPAPP are products of a long process of confidence building with the communities which have not been reached by other government agencies. More often than not, regular agencies of the government cannot penetrate or are not allowed access in rebel influence areas, and it is only OPAPP through its peace mechanism who can deliver basic government services to these areas. OPAPP projects are not part of the major final outputs or MFOs of regular agencies, and thus are not given full priority by these implementing agencies, resulting in delay or non-completion of the project implementation. In fact, agencies have refused project implementation as the delay and non-completion of projects affect their agency performance.
Well, firstly, I dispute that assessment, and I think the line agencies, if given the opportunity, would dispute that rule, because that says a lot about their capability. In fact, shows lack of confidence on the part of the line agencies to implement these projects. But having said that, to this Congress belongs policy formulation, and it is our submission that OPAPP should stick to its mandate as originally crafted, and that is as management and supervision of a comprehensive peace process, and as supported also by the other provisions cited by the good sponsor. And we repeat, this is a continuation of the work initiated by the National Unification Commission, of which this representation had the opportunity to serve before during the time of President Ramos, and we never implemented projects. We managed the peace process. So if the sponsor would agree, and he has said he has agreed with our views, we would request the committee to craft the appropriate amendment to the General Appropriations Bill, so that the principles that we have discussed for the past 15 minutes or 30 minutes here can be incorporated in the proposed General Appropriations Bill version of the Senate, if accepted by the good sponsor.
In actual fact, Mr. President, the special provision that appears on the 2017 GAA is no longer in existence in the General Appropriations Bill, and even in the NEP. It's no longer it's not there, Mr. President.
Good if it's good and bad, because if it is not there.
But if I may disclose,
yes, please.
I amended the the General Appropriations Bill to revive that particular special provision.
Well, I am submitting to the sound discretion of the good sponsor. He fully understands where we are coming from, and that is basically to just stick to the mandate of the Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, or OPAPP, and that therefore there should be, to the extent that we can do it, we should not repeat the same situation that the Supreme Court struck in the PDAF cases, which effectively, the basis of such striking down being intervention in the budget after it is passed by Congress. That principle should apply whether or not you are a senator, a congressman, or a member of the cabinet. So it is on that context that we are suggesting that in the committee report that will be, or the committee amendments that will be submitted to the chamber, that concept should be followed insofar as the 7.677 billion allocation for 2018 is concerned.
I already expressed my view and sentiment in that regard, Mr. President. So
And you are in concurrence with the, just for the record.
I already said I'm in full agreement for
Thank
the
you
same
very
reason
much.
that you cited.
Thank you very much. Just one final point. There are confidential funds in the budget of OPAPP. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is it 60 million?
That is correct, Mr. President.
May we know how this is used and why is there a need for confidential funds?
They're utilizing the fund to comply with the special some special instructions from the President, Mr. President.
Are these instructions confidential, Mr.
I suppose those are confidential instructions. That's why they're using confidential funds.
Well, well, I will concede that, Mr. President, given the fact that, you know, if you look at the size of the Pamana, it's huge, and this is only 60 million, only in close quotes, so we let that go and allow it to stay in the budget. So with that, Mr. President, with the agreement of the good sponsor on how this budget will be presented in the General Appropriations Act for 2018, we no longer have any questions on budget, and we will have no objection to the same being submitted for consideration of the plenary.
Thank you, distinguished Minority Leader. Thank you, Mr. President.
Question from the chair. Mr. Sponsor? Well,
Yes, Mr. President.
You noticed that special provisions were forgotten or omitted. What would have been the effect if you? That's why you felt the need to amend. What would have been the effect?
Well, the effect should be that they cannot implement any more projects because the special provision specifically states that they're allowed to implement projects.
The implementation of projects by OPAPP began in 2017.
2017, only for this year.
So how has it been? How has the implementation been? 7 billion. How is it?
They have a actual utilization rate of 71.5%, Mr. President. Out of the 8.2 billion, their total obligations amount to 5.9 billion pesos, and that is as of September 30, 2017.
So 71% utilization rate.
Yes, Mr.
As
President.
of,
September 30.
As of September 30. And for the record, Mrs. Sponsor, this is acceptable. This is an acceptable rate.
That's a more than acceptable rate of utilization or obligation, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Majority Leader.
President, there being no other interpellators, I move that the budget of the OPAPP, Office of the Presidential Advisor on the Peace Process, be deemed submitted for the body's consideration.
Any objection? Seeing none, motion is approved.
We're ready for 3 more big departments, Mr. President. So in the meantime, I move to suspend the session for 10 minutes.
Session is suspended.